Hey everyone, welcome back to another Orbit devlog. This week was all about introducing a brand new shield system to the game. What I originally thought would be a fairly straightforward feature quickly turned into one of the biggest systems I've worked on so far. Not only can the boss now protect itself with orbiting shields, but players can eventually obtain shields of their own through upgrades. Along the way, I also ended up completely overhauling how bullets interact with one another, making the projectile system much easier to expand moving forward. Orbiting shields. The biggest addition this week was the orbiting shield mechanic. The boss can now summon a rotating shield that blocks incoming projectiles. To make this work, I created a dedicated orbiting shield component that controls the shield's movement independently from the shield segment itself. This ended up making the system much more flexible and easier to build on later. During development, I experimented with several different ideas. I tried multiple shield segments, different orbiting patterns, and a few more complicated behaviors. In the end, though, I decided to keep the first version simple with a single rotating shield. Sometimes the simplest design ends up creating the most enjoyable gameplay. Shield behaviors. Once the basic shield was working, I started experimenting with different behaviors. The standard version simply blocks incoming projectiles. From there, I added several variations. One version reflects bullets back toward their source. Another redirects reflected shots toward the player as a counterattack. I also experimented with shields that actively track their target instead of simply orbiting. Not every prototype made it into the game, but each one helped shape a much more flexible shield framework for future boss mechanics. Player shields. The shield isn't just a boss mechanic anymore. Players can now unlock their own orbiting shield as an upgrade during a run. This required integrating the shield system into the upgrade framework so that the shield only appears after the upgrade has been obtained. One thing I like about this approach is that it opens the door for future shield upgrades. For example, I'm already planning a legendary upgrade that will give the player's shield the ability to reflect incoming projectiles. Bullet reflection. With shields came another challenge: reflected bullets. Simply reversing a projectile's direction didn't feel particularly interesting. Instead, reflected bullets now behave much more intelligently. When a projectile is reflected, ownership changes correctly. The projectile slows down slightly after bouncing. It can optionally counterattack toward the player, and it receives its own visual feedback, so it's easy to identify. These changes make reflections feel much more satisfying while also creating new strategic possibilities during combat. Bullet interaction overhaul. Probably the biggest technical improvement this week is something players won't even notice. Previously, every bullet handled its own collision logic. As more projectile types were added, this quickly became difficult to maintain, so I decided to redesign the system. I created a dedicated bullet resolver that centralizes all bullet versus bullet interactions into a single script. Now, instead of every projectile trying to understand every possible interaction, the bullet resolver decides what should happen whenever two projectiles meet. Right now, it handles interactions such as normal bullets, storm projectiles, reflected shots, team ownership, and future projectile types. This doesn't change gameplay directly, but it makes adding new projectile mechanics much easier going forward. Sometimes the biggest improvements aren't new features. They're improvements to the underlying systems that make future development smoother. Wrapping up. Overall, this update was all about building another core system for Orbit. The boss gained orbiting shields. Players can now unlock shields of their own. Projectile reflections became much more dynamic, and the bullet interaction system was completely redesigned to make future expansion much easier. It's one of those updates where a lot of the work happened behind the scenes, but it lays the foundation for a lot of exciting mechanics in future episodes. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next devlog.